Hello everyone, and welcome to this celebration of 60 years of the synthesizer with computer music. And in this tutorial we're going back to the 90s to examine the supersaw. The supersaw was a sound that became synonymous with dance and trance music in the 90s and was generated by a couple of particular machines. The originator for the sound was the Roland JP8000, but it was a sound that was not only embraced by the dance movement of the era, but also by machines such as the Access Virus virtual analog synthesizer. We can do a fantastic supersaw facsimile with our own Zebra CM plugin, so load up a DAW, put in an instance of the Zebra CM, and we'll get cracking. As per usual, when we're using the Zebra CM, we want to initialize the patch. So having loaded the plugin up, go to the drop-down menu at the top, which is allocated from the display, and select Init for initialize. Having initialized the plugin, we're going to strongly advise that you visit the master volume on the bottom right-hand side of the plugin and turn that down to a value of 20. Now, just as a reminder, anytime you change the value of a pot on screen, you'll see its value replicated in the display above. This is going to be a particularly loud patch, which is why it's advisable to turn the volume down at this stage so you don't damage and overload your equipment. Next, we're going to go to Oscillator 1 and we're going to alias up the sawtooth waveform. We do this by clicking on the number 11, which is in the Oscillator 1 section, and while we're here we might as well do the same thing for Oscillator 2. We also need to increase the volume of Oscillator 2 to the same amount as Oscillator 1, so clicking and holding on the volume pot within the Oscillator 2 section, drag it up until the value at the top reads 100. Now we're hearing a sound like this. And you can hear that there's a degree of what you might call digital phasing in there, where one aliased waveform is on top of another, but being digital, they're all completely the same, which is why it sounds a bit weird. What we need to do is detune those aliased waveforms, and we do this using the detune pot that you'll find in both the Oscillator 1 and the Oscillator 2 section. Beginning with Oscillator 1, click on the detune pot and drag it up to a value of 14 as displayed in the upper display. By an opposite token, go to the detune pot in the Oscillator 2 section and detune that by -16. This spreads out all of the alias waveforms and we now hear a sound like this. Much thicker. Another aspect of the iconic sounds from this period is the exceptionally bright filters and very digital filters with it. So moving to the filter section, we want to select the filter which is called LP for low pass, Excite. Having selected that, decrease the cutoff amount to 115, that's 115. While we're in the vicinity of the filter, go to the user-defined pot which has ENV2, that's envelope 2 written underneath it, and change that to a value of +35. This is going to send a little bit of envelope 2 in the direction of the cutoff control, and add a little bit of brightness at the beginning of each note played. Because we're working on a sound which is not entirely dissimilar from William Orbit's classic Adagio for Strings remix, we want to do a little bit of work with envelope 1, particularly on the attack phase and the release phase. We're going to lessen the attack by going to the attack pot and dragging it up to a value of 24. This will just mean that it's not quite so abrupt when you play a note. And we want to do the same kind of effect on the back end using the release phase, so clicking on the release pot, change that to a value of 26. Now our sound is pretty much ready to go at this point, but it will be enhanced by some back-end effects. So moving down to the Master Effects section on the bottom right-hand side, double-click on the Delay legend and the Reverb legend, and this will activate both of those effects. At the moment we feel that the reverb is a little bit on the wet side, so we would suggest lessening this by going to the Reverb section where we find the wet pot and changing that to a value of 20. It means that we're still getting the same amount of decay, but it's just not quite so long. So there we have it. There's our iconic supersaw pad. Now go and get trancey.